6 synovial joints.
The synovial joint allows the most movement out of the other two joints, fibrous and cartilaginous. They are joined by ligaments that enclose the ends of articulating bones. Types of joints.
Hinge, gingivalis joints. These joints have a convex portion of one bone fitting into a concave portion of another. They allow movement in one plane. The joints between the bones of the fingers and between the ulna and the humerus are examples of hinge joints.
An example of the hinge joint would be the elbow.
Pivot, or trochoid joints. This type of synovial joint allows rotation in one plane. A rounded point of one bone fits into a groove of another. One example of a pivot joint is the atlantoaxial articular joint between the first two vertebrae in the neck, which allows the rotation of the head.
An example of the pivot joint is the neck.
Ball and socket, spheroidal joints. This is the most maneuverable of joints, allowing for forward movement, backward movement, and circular movement. With this type of synovial joint, the ball at one bone fits into the socket of another, allowing movement around three axes. The most familiar joints of this type are at the hip and the shoulder.
Examples of ball and socket joints would be the shoulder and the hip.
Ellipsoid joint. This type of synovial joint allows movement in two planes. An example of an ellipsoid joint is found between the second metacarpal and the first phalanx of the second finger. The wrist is also an example of an ellipsoid joint.
An example of the ellipsoid joint would be the wrist.
Saddle joints. These joints allow movement in two planes, flexion, extension, and adduction, abduction, but do not allow for rotation like a ball and socket joint. A key saddle joint is found at the carpometacarpal articulation of the thumb.
An example of the saddle joint would be the thumb.
Gliding or plane or arthrodial joints. This group connects flat or slightly curved bone surfaces that glides against one another. Examples of gliding joints in the foot between the tarsals and in the hand among the carpals.
An example of the gliding joint would be the bones in the foot. Hi there.
Wow. Hi there.
Today we are here with Bianca.
What do you know?
Okay, point where the hinge joint is.
This is my grade 11 healthcare. I'm sorry, Miss Ferguson. I don't know. Is it?
Ding, 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 you got it right.
Did I really?
Yeah. We are here with Steven. Okay, point to where the ball and socket joint is.
The ball and socket?
The what is it?
Ball and socket.
Ball and socket.
Oh, I know where it is.
The ball. The ball and
Is it
socket.
on the heel? Is it the heel or the
I was
knee?
pointing
Is it-
there actually.
No.
I was wait.
The ball in a socket, so that's be something.
Some balls.
It's very obvious.
Oh, is
Wow.
it the shoulders?
Yeah.
Oh my god, Bianca, she's
You know where the ball and socket joint is?
ball and socket. Oh, here. Yo.
Can you name another example of the ball and socket joint?
Yeah, this,
Oh, good job. Wow.
I know.
Can you name where the saddle joint is?
Saddle. Like, so like, or saddle. Like, here. No. I'm dumb. That's dumb. Here, right here. Right here. It's this one.
It doesn't necessarily have to do with sitting.
Then why would they call it saddle?
Saddle.
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 Satellite. So, like, here.
Okay, we're done.